Donald Trump has partially eased sanctions against Russia amid statements about how much they are hurting the Russian economy. The United States Treasury has extended the license for Lukoil transactions for 3 weeks, until December 13, and for some transactions, sanctions have been postponed for as long as 5 months. Previously, United States sanctions required all companies worldwide to stop all operations with the Russian company Lukoil by November 21. Until that time, Lukoil could sell its foreign assets, which it can no longer manage now. But it's obvious that the Russians won't be able to do this by November 21. That's why they went to beg the Americans to give them more time to sell Lukoil's assets, and Trump gave in. But there are two important points here. First, the United States eased the sanctions because they were asked to. For example, Bulgaria, where the only oil refinery in the whole country unfortunately belongs to Lukoil, and Bulgaria doesn't have time to buy it back or sell it to someone else. And second, an American company has set its sights on Lukoil's assets abroad, and it needs more time to close the deal. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss and analyze this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave any detailed comment below. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support Pechiy's channel. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. So, for 2 days now, there has been negativity online, outrage that Donald Trump has weakened sanctions against Russia. While his officials boast about their effectiveness, they also admit there are no more sanctions to impose, so they must keep pressing with the current ones. What's this about? For example, United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They believe that Washington doesn't have many options left for imposing new sanctions against Russia. Quote, "We have hit the major Russian oil companies, which everyone was asking for. It's obvious that these measures need to be implemented, and it will take time before their effects become noticeable. But I don't know what else can be done. In this regard, we're running out of options for sanctions." When asked for clarification about whether sanctions are expected against Russia's shadow fleet, the head of the United States State Department stated that in this regard, measures could be taken by European countries. He explained his position by saying that many of the shipments using this shadow fleet take place in areas much closer to Europe. Which is true, the Baltic Sea and France's coast are examples. But if, as Marco Rubio says, we need to wait for the effect of sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil, then why weaken these sanctions when it comes to the shadow fleet? Rubio says, listen, the effect is cumulative. Let's wait a little and it will become noticeable. Suddenly the Treasury eases sanctions. Let's find out why. The United States Treasury extended for 3 weeks until December 13 the license for Lukoil's transactions related to the company's foreign gas station network and contracts for the sale of its international assets, which account for more than 0.5% of global oil production and are valued at $22 billion as of 2024. This follows from a statement by the United States Office of Foreign Assets Control. Previously, the Donald Trump administration had demanded that the Russian oil company wind down its overseas operations by November 21. Separately, the entry into force of sanctions against Lukoil has been postponed for transactions with the company's enterprises in Bulgaria, where it owns the only oil refinery in the country, which the Bulgarian authorities are preparing to nationalize. So, the deadline for these sanctions has been pushed back to April 29, 2026. As the White House assures, Washington wants to give its allies in Central Europe and the Middle East more time to close deals with Lukoil, and to explore options that would allow them to keep their assets under the control of non-Russian companies. I'll say right away that this is probably not the last easing of sanctions, unfortunately. In Washington, they believe that they are allowing potential buyers to keep their positions, but actually closing the deal will take much more than 30 days, even if it's a sale at reduced prices. The deals will require more time. Accordingly, most likely there will be another easing and another postponement, but it's important to note that this easing doesn't mean that Russians are not continuing to lose. Lukoil's assets abroad will inevitably be sold, and Russia will definitely lose its positions in Europe and the Middle East. And not only that, by the way, a bit of context. In late October, the United States sanctioned Lukoil to pressure the Kremlin and end Russia's war on Ukraine. Within a month, all companies that do not want to fall under United States secondary sanctions had to end any cooperation with the Russian oil giant. Lukoil, for its part, announced the sale of its foreign assets. They realized they can't manage everyone and no one will want to work with them. And so the main deal fell through. Oil trader Gunvor tried to acquire the foreign assets of Russian Lukoil, which is under United States sanctions, but it didn't work out. Gunvor was named by Lukoil as a potential buyer, but the United States Department of the Treasury warned that it would not grant this company a license to conduct business until the war in Ukraine is over. They basically said, sure, go ahead and buy, no problem, but all these assets abroad won't be able to operate, you won't have a license, as reported until 2014 subtitry Dimatorzok. The co-owner of Gunvor, Russian businessman Gennady Timichenko, acted one day before sanctions were imposed on him. Sold his share in the United States, 43.5% of the shares, to another major shareholder of the company, Torbjörn Törnqvist. As a result, he received 86% of the shares worth $6.6 billion. Now, Törnqvist is the chairman of the board of directors. However, even with control over Gunvor, American authorities remain cautious about its compensation and possible ties to Moscow. They claim to have a clever plan, like selling assets, but were really just selling them to themselves. Well, now for the most interesting part. According to Bloomberg sources, in recent days, interest in Lukoil's overseas portfolio has increased, and potential buyers from the United States, Europe, and Gulf countries have approached the United States Treasury for approval of deals with this company. Earlier, a Reuters source reported that Lukoil's assets could be sold to the major American investment fund Carlyle. An American investment fund is considering a deal and preparing an application for the United States Treasury. Therefore, it's possible that the pause was made specifically for the American company. In the United States, they could even benefit from these sanctions. I should note that Lukoil owns 3 oil refineries in Europe, as well as shares in oil fields in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Iraq, Mexico, Gaza, Iran, Egypt, and Nigeria. Plus hundreds, I would even say thousands of gas stations around the world, including, by the way, the United States of America. In America, Lukoil owns about 200 gas stations. In the early 2000s, they bought out Mobil and rebranded everything as Lukoil. On this YouTube channel, there was a detailed analysis of exactly what Lukoil owns abroad, what it is losing, and how these sanctions will affect it. So go to the channel and be sure to watch. I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.